So today, celebrating the International PKU Day 2021, we are very, very pleased and grateful to have Professor Susan Waisbren, who is the leading research and clinical psychologist in PKU. And she's published a lot of papers, very influential, and has seen quite a few children and adults in her time. She's going to be answering questions from her Postbag. So over to you, Susan.
Thank you so much. I first want to say what an honor it is to be invited to help celebrate International PKU Day. So the task for today, Suzanne asked a small group of people who've written about their own mental health to come up with questions on behalf of the PKU community. I will do my best to answer these questions. So here goes in the spirit of the Jolly Postman. I'm going to make 3 key points today, keeping with the theme of the post. The first is that some aspects of PKU are like the Daily Post. You just have to read your mail, take care of business, and pay your bills. The second key point is that sometimes it's like a special delivery. You need to take care of things now. You really can't wait. And the third major point is that sometimes it's a surprise package. Social support comes your way along with some unexpected blessings. So here's part 1, the Daily Post. You just have to read your mail, take care of business, and pay your bills. So what is that? But what do I mean by that? I mean the diet. The first question relates to that. How should parents continue to push their children to maintain diet when they fear that their children will resent them and develop negative feelings about the diet? And this question came from Sahib. Well, first thing is establish early on that diet is like wearing a seatbelt or paying bills. You just have to do it. It's not an emotional thing. It doesn't have to do with the punishment or praise. It's just how we do it. I have found that families that take that attitude that, yeah, the PKU diet is just the diet, do better. The second one is, as time goes on, don't give up. This is the dance between parents and their offspring. The children and young adults or teenagers won't resent you. They'll know you care. And remember not to be lenient because of your own guilt at passing on the gene for PKU. We all pass on lots of things, and you're passing on many good qualities as well. And then argue about something other than food. You can argue about the boyfriend, the movies, or homework. This is a time when this is a transition time, when there will be arguments. And just expect it, and it's part of the dance. Yes, but what about sneaking behavior? This is a question from Claire. Well, they will sneak, and this is also part of the dance. So stress the importance of treatment and just keep repeating yourself and repeating yourself. Remember how long it took to remind your children to say thank yous and pleases? It's the same thing. You don't stop. Yes, but what about the day-to-day issues of ADHD and executive functioning deficits? This is some of the day-to-day challenges that many people with PKU experience. And the question was, why do you think that there's a significant rate of people with both ADHD and PKU? Or rather, is it that ADHD and PKU have similarities like executive functioning, memory, and inattentiveness, and the two are sometimes confused? This is a question from Claire. Well, the answer is that yes, PKU and executive functioning and attention deficits do go together. These are common issues in children with PKU, even those that are being treated, and they may persist into adulthood. The attention deficits that people experience tend to be the inattentive type, not hyperactivity. And executive functioning deficits, I'll go into that a little bit more, what that is. Visual spatial difficulties, which sometimes can relate to problems in math, and slower processing speed. There's a big debate in the literature whether it really is inattention or is it slower processing speed. And it's probably a little bit of both. So what is executive functioning? And this can be especially challenging. It involves working memory, planning, inhibitory control, being able to hold back from doing something, cognitive flexibility, which means shifting from one task to another, and paying attention for long periods of time. The thing about executive functioning is it's kind of a catch-all. And I always say it's sort of the new ADHD. In the old days, everybody had attention deficits. Now everybody has executive functioning. And in PKU, it's not all aspects of executive functioning that are challenging. It tends to be more working memory, some planning, and some inhibitory control. As those are the three that come out the most. And as you can see, those are issues that are relating to sticking to a diet. So it can be a challenge. So what do you do about it? Know your strengths and weaknesses. What's your story? Well, is cognitive and neuropsychological assessment or testing throughout life helpful? Is that a way to find out your story? And I say yes. If you know your strengths and weaknesses, you can make more informed choices about activities, work, school, and relationships. So if you think about it, if you know that you have, let's say, a memory issue, then you take steps to compensate for that. You have a calendar, you write things down a little more often. If you know that you have some trouble with planning, then you know that in relationships, you need to make that clear. And maybe the other person does a little more of the planning and doesn't get annoyed at you for it. So it's very helpful to know what you know how to do. So now let's move to part 2, special delivery. What do you need to do now as an adult? Well, I say you take care of your mental health. What can individuals with PKU do to improve their mental health? What steps can an individual with PKU take to reduce anxiety in both a day-to-day fashion and also long-term anxiety? What steps can individuals with PKU take to reduce stress in their lives, given that a big source of stress is managing the diet? And how can we find ways to be kind to ourselves and giving ourselves a break when you have a condition that you can't really ever take a break from? So these are all very good questions, and I will hopefully that I will be answering them in a way that is helpful. The first thing that I think you need to do now is develop an identity beyond PKU. Embedded in these questions is the sense of, I am PKU. It's a big part of my stress. It's a big part of my life. It's what I have to think about. Try to move away from that sense of identity. For a long time, we were told that our moods, performance at school or work, or our relationships were connected to our Phi levels. It is very easy to internalize and assume that any problem we have must be because of PKU. What strategies might help in dealing with this? So I asked the question, who am I? To ask to myself. So who are you? Who am I? These are some really good questions that I've used in counseling with people with PKU. What is my favorite color? What is my favorite food? What is my favorite music? And I'll tell you about one young woman I saw who was having exactly the kinds of problems that you were listing above. And her favorite color was red. And I said, why? And she said, because I like the fiery aspect of it. And this was a very quiet, shy person. I said, what's your favorite food? She said, spicy foods. And what's your favorite music? I like country western, which surprised me because she was kind of punky kind of a girl. And I said, why? She said, because it reminds me of my dad. And her dad had passed away recently. And I said to her, so you're the kind of person who underneath really likes to take chances and do exciting things. And you like spicy foods. And yet you're really tied to your family. And that really helped her gradually to form a sense of who she was apart from her PKU. Similarly, what friends or relatives do I relate best to? What kind of person am I? Or who do I like best? What activities do I like to do? What do I dream about? So then you can finish this sentence with, I am the kind of person who. And once you have that basis, it's a lot easier to handle so many other issues. If you can look at yourself as, yes, PKU really does determine what I eat, but it really doesn't determine who I am. That said, it's important to know your mental health risks. Anxiety and then sometimes depression are more prevalent in people with PKU. And we think it's because of the neurotransmitters that are related to the breakdown of phenylalanine, to tyrosine, to dopamine. Hasn't quite been proven, but that's the theory. So recognize the signs in yourself of anxiety and depression. Poor sleep, or you're sleeping too much, you're irritable, you're forgetful, poor job performance, you're crying a lot, your fearfulness, you have fears, weight loss or weight gain that's sudden. Those are all some of the signs of depression. And how do you treat your anxiety and depression? Well, we can't really do that all on one slide today, but there's many options. One is medication, but I want to tell you that in my experience, antidepressants and anti-anxiety medication don't work very well in individuals with PKU when their blood phenylalanine levels are high. So the first thing is to get those levels down. And then if you want to try the medication, it might help you, but you may not need it. Equally important is lifestyle changes, exercise. For any person, exercise is a very good antidote to anxiety and depression. I'm a big proponent of counseling. Yes, I'm a psychologist, so of course I say that. But counseling can be from a religious person, it can be from a school counselor, it can be from an uncle or aunt, somebody that you can really relate to, that has some training though, in being able to talk to you about some of the issues that you might be having. And equally important is social support. You need to have people in your life who support you for your diet, not just give you support. So that's easier said than done. And one of the questions is, what is cognitive behavior therapy and how can it specifically help people with PKU? Well, I think this is, I wasn't trained in cognitive behavior therapy, so it's not something that I use, but in the last 20 years, it's been very useful for people because it's problem oriented and it focuses on the present. So this really fits in with our, what can we do now? And instead of focusing on the causes of distress or symptoms in the past, like, oh, well, I had PKU and everybody thought everything that I did was related to me having PKU, it looks at the messages you give yourself and how to change those messages. So you improve a patient's current state of mind by changing the messages we tell ourselves and then practicing different ways of coping. So usually cognitive behavior therapy is 6 or 7 sessions. It's a fairly brief kind of counseling. I know in England that it's offered there and probably throughout Europe. So it's a very good method for people with PKU. But it's also important to remember, what is the goal of therapy? I can't tell you how many times people have come to me and said, yeah, I tried therapy, but it didn't work. Well, that's because in their minds, they wanted the therapist to fix their problems. Really, the goal of therapy is to give you the tools to deal with your issues. So if you can come up with, oh, I'm telling myself this message, I'm going to start telling myself this other message, that's you figuring out how to do it. And that's how you can sustain the gains. So how does that help if you have PKU? If someone has been off diet for a significant portion of life, let's say 3 years, 5 years, 10 years or more, and they're struggling to get back on diet, what tips do you suggest to help them get back on diet? This is something I've spent a lot of time doing. So, and Suzanne wanted to know, what are the top tips for improving mental health if it is going downhill? All right, usually if mental health is going downhill, your blood levels are going uphill. So you got to break the cycle. How does it work? Well, high Phe is related to depression and anxiety and poor functioning. And poor functioning relates to depression and anxiety. I'm not doing very well. Now I don't feel good. And then poor functioning leads to poor dietary control because you're less well able to plan. You have lower motivation. You may not be making good decisions, and that leads to high Phe, and that's the cycle. But the key is you can break the cycle anywhere. So you can start with your depression and anxiety. You can start with your Phe level. You can start with dietary control. Anywhere you can break the point, you do. And then find out what works for you. Now, this is a little bit similar to who are you apart from your PKU? Are you the kind of person that likes to just do something and plunge right in? Or are you the person who likes to do things gradually? Try taking a little more of the medical food first, or try cutting back on the protein first, and then just doing it bit by bit. Or do you like group support? Do you want to have other people involved with you? Do you need a lot of support? Do you want to get deal with a nutritionist who can help you? Or are you a yes, but person? There's some people who will say yes, but to everything. And for those people, I say, you definitely need to be in counseling because that's the way to break that cycle. That said, be patient with yourself. This is hard. When you get a setback, be proud of yourself for trying again. Don't look back, think about tomorrow. This is very much part of cognitive behavior therapy, by the way. And sometimes the hardest thing and the right thing to do are the same. So be inspired by that kind of thought. There's a cautionary note, and this was a question from Claire. Are there any red flags we should be aware of when trying to get back on diet that could mean we are having an unhealthy relationship with food, the beginnings of a potential eating disorder? Well, how do you know? Behaviors and attitudes, if your behaviors and attitudes indicate that dieting and control of food are becoming primary concerns. If that's all you're thinking about, that's an issue. If you're restricting your protein, but not taking your medical food or PKU supplements, I've seen that happen a lot, and that's not really going back on treatment. Also, it doesn't help because your body will start to break down your own body protein and your levels will go up. So you need the protein, which you get in the medical foods. And then if there's physical signs of malnutrition, if you stop getting menstrual periods, if you're a woman, if there's dizziness, sleep problems, and a number of other things. So now we go to part 3. What are the surprise packages in the post? Well, social support because of PKU. Do you have suggestions for strategies to avoid feeling like a burden when dealing with others or asking for adjustments to menus? This is the yes, but about social support. Well, I would say you turn it around. Would you feel someone was a burden if they asked you to skip the mustard if you were making them a sandwich? No. If you really think about it, people around you do not consider you a burden. The other thing, though, is that the better you feel about yourself, the better friends you will choose. So your social support network will feel better if you're feeling better about yourself. And this I often see with individuals with PKU. Once they get their metabolic control underway, they may actually decide to change boyfriends or girlfriends or have different relationships. And at first that feels like, oh, things are worse, but it's actually better because the person they were with wasn't making them feel good about themselves. How much can the right support group help PKU individuals, and what is the best approach to finding a healthy support group? Well, support groups help a lot, and a support group can be one friend or dozens of friends. And I think it's important to remember that it's support not only, oh, I have a lot of, supportive family members, but I have support for maintaining my treatment as well. In terms of the best approach to finding a healthy support group, trust your instincts. You'll know. And the fact that you're on this webinar means that you have some connections already. This is really important, keeping positive attitudes. What are some of I call it counting your blessings. Because you've had PKU your whole lives, what are some of the traits? And I found this list one time when we had a group of young women with PKU and their significant others. And we asked them to say what were the positives about having PKU. And the lists were much longer than this, especially from the partners of the young women that were part of our group. First, you've learned self-control. You have compassion for others who may have a health issue. You definitely eat a healthier diet if you're following the diet. You know a whole lot about protein and food. You know about genetics. And last but not least, you are part of an amazing group of people with PKU who truly understand you and are cheering for you. And I can't tell you how this has changed in the 40 years that I've been working in this field. In the beginning, people really did feel alone, but now there's groups all around the world, and certainly with social media, people have a better chance of being together. And research shows the top 3 tips for maintaining mental well-being when you have PKU. This is Sam, and this was something Suzanne wanted, my top 3 tips. So the first one is social support. And again, I've talked about that a lot. And again, it's social support for the treatment as well as social support for you as a person. The second is maintaining positive attitudes about the treatment, but also about yourself. And that's part of knowing who you are apart from your PKU. And the last one I didn't touch on much today because nobody asked any questions about it is manageability. So it needs to be manageable. In the United States, it's a big problem to pay for the treatment. I don't think that's a problem in most of Europe. But the other things to keep it manageable, if there's ways to have the medical food that are easier for you to manage. Some of the new treatments make it more manageable. So really push for that. And I know I just wrote a big support letter for getting the National Health Service in England to accept a payment for Kuvan for adults. So it's that kind of thing. Anything that can make it more manageable really counts. So the 3 key points, and I hope you'll remember these as you think about the post bag, that some aspects of PKU are like the daily post. You just have to read your mail, take care of business, and pay your bills. Sometimes it's like a special delivery. You need to take care of things now, especially an identity beyond your PKU. And sometimes it's a surprise package. Use your social support when it comes your way, along with some unexpected blessings, and count those and notice them when you're thinking about this. And with that, I want to thank you and say that if you have other questions or you need to get in touch with me, there's my contact information. Thank you.